Good morning, everybody. How y'all doing this morning? Good.
My feet don't even hit the...
I know.
Sorry.
Not
Should've
designed
gone
for
short.
short people.
Yeah.
Are the worst panel experience of your lives, I'm sure.
No, it'll
Not
be
at
the
all.
best.
I'm Frank Conkle. I'm the executive editor at NextGov, and we've been putting on these CX-related events for, 4 or 5 years now. And it's been kind of cool to see some of that early momentum take off. And it seems appropriate. I think this is our 9th one, something like that. Wendy's actually a representative for the federal agency who had the first federal chief customer officer.
Correct.
It's only appropriate that you're here today. And then Annie, a representative from Lyft, company that I used this morning, and I'm sure many of you have as well. So we're going to talk a little bit about culture, maybe an overused term sometimes, but perhaps underappreciated term as well. So there's a lot we can talk about. We'll open up for some Q&A a bit later on. But first, I just want you guys to talk a little bit about yourselves and your role in your customers. So we'll start with Wendy.
Sure. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here, and good morning. My name is Wendy Bhagat, and I'm the Director of the Awareness and Outreach Group within the Office of Federal Student Aid. This is an office within the Department of Education. We are the ones that give out aid for students to go to college and career school. Many of you probably know us as the FAFSA office. If you have gone through that process yourself or have gone through it with your kids, we are trying to make it easier and better every year. Our customers, therefore, are our students who are the high school seniors or the adult learners, college students who are in college or career school, and also the parents who are helping their students through the process, and borrowers, those individuals who have graduated and have successful careers and are paying off their loans.
Annie.
Hi, everyone. My name is Annie. As you mentioned, I am with Lyft. I lead a team called Field Empowerment, which may not make a whole lot of sense to you now, but we'll talk about it in a little bit. So I've been with Lyft for about 2.5 years now, which in Lyft years feels like a pretty long time, though it's flown by. And prior to Lyft, I spent 8 years at Apple. So really became obsessed with the customer experience at Apple. And when I was looking for a new company, wanted to find a company that had a similar culture and similar vision. And that's where I found Lyft. And it has proven to be very customer focused since day one. And it's great to see the journey as we've evolved and grown as a company and our ability to maintain that focus. We consider our customers really to be riders, so hopefully all of you, drivers, and then also our internal team members. And so a lot of the work that I do on field empowerment is empowering our internal team members to be able to better serve our drivers so that they can better serve our riders.
All right, so we founded in 2012, was it? So you guys are still pretty new.
Still pretty new.
All right, let's stay with you. The Field Empowerment Team is something that you guys came up with last year. Mm-hmm. So tell us a little bit about what that team does.
Yeah, so first I'd like to talk a little bit about why that team originated. So we've always been in the business of supporting drivers, but last year was when we really made a decision to deepen that commitment. And in order to do so, we knew we were going to need to double down on our field operations. Some of the commitments that we made last year were around providing better services to drivers, so things like driver service centers where they can go and get support, get their vehicles serviced, things like that. And so we knew that if we really wanted to be successful in that way, we were going to have to change the way we operate. And so, most companies operate from top down, where there's people at HQ are making the decisions, pushing it out to the field, and the field executes. We found that the problem with that was that those people making the decisions end up being the ones that are furthest from the customer. And that's problematic because they don't always see everything. And so we really wanted to flip that pyramid and empower the people closest to the customer, so the ones in the field, on the ground, the ones serving our drivers directly. And so that's where our team was created. So the purpose of our team is essentially to ensure that all of those team members closest to the customer in the field have all the tools, the training, and the resources to be able to be successful and serve the driver. And so it's a fairly new team, and so we are exploring different ways of doing that. But a lot of it is around, training around mindset and culture, and moving away from that mindset that HQ makes all the decisions and pushes it down to the field, and rather that our teams on the ground in the field, from our most entry level all the way up, have the right thinking around the customer.
One thing that caught my attention when you were talking, when we were shooting the breeze over there, was that your top level folks are encouraged to actually be drivers themselves at times.
Yeah, yeah.
So they get the actual experience, and you've done it yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, again, it goes back to, in order to really know what your customer wants, you have to talk to your customer. You have to sort of put yourself in their shoes. So at Lyft, everyone who works for Lyft is encouraged to drive. So we have even our C-level, our founder and CEO get behind the wheel pretty frequently, especially during, holidays, big events, because that's when you're really going to feel the pain that a driver might feel and figure out how to solve those problems. And so
You should have put yourself in the thick of it and done it like I was talking. Saturday night, DC,
Yeah.
2 in the morning, get the full, real experience.
Yeah,
It's a little different than the drive into these kind of events, I think.
Oh yeah, he asked me if I'd driven before, and I've driven 2 rides as a Lyft driver, and I was new to DC, and it was enough to make me go a little crazy and say, okay, I'm going to sell my car because driving in DC is a nightmare. So I have a ton of respect for the drivers who do it because it is very, very challenging.
All right, Wendy, you guys have had an interesting journey over the last 8 to 10 years. So I want to talk, I remember you guys were sort of famous for being one of the first federal agencies to talk and engage in real time with customers on social media.
Yes.
Right, so that was important. So let's use that as a starting point to some of the new features now that, the new ways that you're engaging with your audiences now.
So we did start with social media, and I'll tell you a little bit about that and how that's evolved, because it shows how we are constantly evolving our customer experience and seeing what our customers want and where they're at. When we started with social media with Facebook and Twitter and YouTube, we didn't just jump in and start posting things and trying to talk to people. We listened to them. We tried to listen to see what are people talking about around financial aid, around FAFSA. Then we started tweeting out or doing Facebook posts. And then we thought people, there's questions being asked out there, but no one's answering them. So we should answer them. We are the trusted source. And we set up office hours where once a month we'd have a particular topic. We'd say we'd be online on Twitter and we'd answer those questions. We then evolved from there because people started asking questions at all times to basically being always on. Always on with our social media. People started expecting answers from us right away, which we're still trying to do. We're ramping up our team. We're very lean right now. But they knew to turn to us to get those questions answered. And that's what made it important and valuable for us. And started asking some complex questions where we worked with others within our organization to get the answers for those individuals. And the fun thing that we do is we sometimes jump into other conversations, especially around prom time, when students start talking about their big prom proposals, and there's someone responds back and says, well, watch out, you don't want to lose your FAFSA funding, and we jump in and say, we're watching, and then we just tell them what they can use their funds for and what they can't, so that's fun for us. In addition to that, though, we are truly trying to meet people where they're at. We know that individuals are using their phone all the time, and typically not for making phone calls. It's for going online and taking care of different things. And so as a result, last year, we launched a mobile app, My Student Aid. And we also addressed that because we knew people were online, but we knew that they were trying to fill out the FAFSA on their phone. And the FAFSA site was very clunky. It was not mobile responsive. So last summer, we did 2 things. One, we made the FAFSA.gov mobile responsive, and we launched this new mobile app. The app has been downloaded over 800,000 times, or 800,000 downloads in less than a year. And with the 1920 FAFSA, the latest FAFSA that we have that's for the students that will be starting school this fall, out of the over 12 million students that have filled out the FAFSA, almost 1 million of them have filled them out on a mobile app. So they are using this new tool that we have. And we are working on making that mobile app even more robust for people to do different things on that as well. And we just did, for the very first time, we did a test run on SMS. It's the first time we did some texting.
So what does that mean? You're texting?
I'll tell you who we're texting students and reminding them to fill out the FAFSA.
So you can fill out your FAFSA on a phone now.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
can.
So my glory years passed me by, and now I
Yes.
can't. I mean, I remember that it was not a very fun process, and my mom did most of the work, and I'm sure she
Yeah.
regrets that.
I think the
not being
parents are
there.
still doing most of the work. so.
Yeah, kids are so lazy these days. Millennials are the worst. So sticking with you, Wendy, you have another effort afoot to improve service delivery more.
Yes.
And it has an impact on culture of your team as well, and we'll get to that. But it's called Next Gen. Tell us about that.
The Next Gen Financial Services Environment. We are trying to transform the way we do our business to improve customer experience. And the first step on that was the mobile app launch and FAFSA.gov becoming mobile responsive. In addition to that, we've just launched another huge project that a lot of my team members are working on it's lovingly called DCC, the Digital Communications Center. And what that is focused on is making sure that we are meeting our students where they're at, as it's a theme for us there, and making it easier for what they're trying to achieve. So the very first thing you'll see, and you'll actually see it by the end of this year, is a new website. It's consolidating all of our student-facing websites, so that'll be an easier place for people to go. In addition to that, there'll be one phone number, one toll-free number. Right now, there's multiple numbers that people go to for different things. They'll have that one number. And the website will also have a virtual assistant, which is new for us. So those are a lot of the outward-facing things, but there's a lot of things that we're doing internally that will help benefit the customer as well. One is that for everything that we're working on, we're doing market research before we go out and decide this is the best thing to do. We are also then doing usability testing with every product that we're building, every piece that we're reiterating. We're doing the usability testing with our actual customers and then continuously refining the products. Another interesting thing that we're doing is consolidating the way we're approaching content development to make sure that when we're creating a Facebook post, we're thinking of, okay, what's going on the website, what email is going out, and really thinking that through with the lens of the customer as well, and hopefully making things better and becoming like the best customer experience anyone can have. When someone thinks of that now, I think of Amex. I know I think of Nordstrom. I'd want people to start thinking of federal student aid in that way as well.
We'll see if you get there.
Ask me in 2 years.
So something that's really important, I think, is the training aspect, right? The kind of people you're bringing in, getting them on the same wavelength. And it's probably one of the best ways to build skill sets of current employees, help them on their journeys to becoming, going wherever they want to go. So I want to talk a little bit about the employee experience at Lyft. You mentioned, I think it was flipping the pyramid, if I recall. And what does that entail, and how are you trying to build up your current roster of talent?
Yeah, good question. And training definitely plays a huge part in that. So in terms of the flipping the pyramid that you mentioned.
And the impetus for flipping the pyramid, too. Were there issues? Were there lessons?
No real issues. Lyft has always been very customer-centric, but I think it was just this realization that if we really want to, and not just talk about being customer-focused, if we really want to do it, we have to give more power and more resources to those people who are closest to the customer. And in most organizations, the people closest to the customer tend to be the more junior team members. And so you're not always thinking, oh, we should invest in them. And that's really the direction that we're heading, is when we talk to our teams at HQ, whether that's our product engineering or marketing, whoever, it's very much you need to go to where the work is happening. If you're familiar with the term Gemba, it's a Japanese term that refers to go to where the work is actually happening. And we talk about that a lot at Lyft, and how if you are trying to solve a problem related to the driver experience, the best place to go find out what's happening is not behind a computer screen. It's actually go out there, get behind the wheel if you can, and if you can't get behind the wheel, go talk to drivers. So in terms of training, we're really training our teams to think that way with that mindset. So one of the first things that we are trying to instill within our organization is this idea that the only person that decides whether a solution or an idea is good or bad is the customer. So you might think you have the greatest idea and the best solution to a problem, but if the customer thinks it sucks, guess what? It sucks. And so we're trying to get that mindset through all of our teams, especially the ones on the ground. And once they have that, once they really believe and understand that, they'll align all their work around delivering value to the customer, and that's ultimately what we want. And so that's the first step. The second step is helping them understand how to identify what is value for the customer and what's waste. So we talk a lot about process and how do we improve our processes, and looking at everything we do and figuring out, okay, what is the customer? And in many cases, the customer is the driver because they're the ones we're directly serving. But in some cases, the customers are internal team members. And so teaching our leaders and our teams to look at everything that they do, every meeting that we have, everything that we ask our teams to do, and say what is actually adding value to the customer experience and what isn't. And for all the things that aren't, we need to eliminate that as much as possible. And so that's a lot of what the training is right now. It's all around the thinking. The way we see it is thinking really is going to dictate the way we work. The way we work is going to dictate the outcomes, and the outcomes are going to dictate the customer experience. And so we have to start with that mindset. When we do these trainings, we do them a little bit differently than I've seen in a lot of companies. We certainly have, bring people into a conference space, teach them what we need to teach them, but a lot of the training that we do is actually in their work. So in the field, on the ground, because we find that when you do, when you make someone sit through a 2-hour, 3-hour, half-day-long presentation, it's great. They walk away feeling inspired, and then what happens? They tend to forget everything that they've learned. So we try to do a lot of hands-on training where they're actually out in the field learning how to do these types of things, and we also try to do it very cross-functionally. So we pull in people from various teams at HQ, various teams in the field, varying levels. So everyone from junior level all the way up to our senior executives training together. Because when we're talking about mindset, subject matters are relevant. And so we try to make that very clear when we're teaching about specifically related to keeping the customer at the center.
Did you say that the senior leaders train at the same time, in the same place as the frontline entry-level folks?
Yeah, for certain things, absolutely.
Yeah, I would love to see that in government, where you have like a cabinet secretary and a call center person in the same room. That would be fascinating to hear that discussion.
You learn a lot. You mentioned the call center, and we do a lot of these immersions where we'll have a lot of our engineers or teams that can sometimes be disconnected a little bit, brought in to do these immersions with our call center teams or teams that are directly supporting the drivers, because you can learn so much. One thing that I've learned is whenever I find myself faced with a problem, I'll be rattling my brain and then realize, if I just go ask a driver or go ask one of our team members who's directly supporting the drivers, they often know the answers.
There used to be a show called something like Undercover CEO, where they do something random like that. Have the boss go down and do stuff, work at a pizza shop or something for a while.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
Learn a lot.
But why do it undercover? Just get out there and do it.
I didn't watch it, but I remember the show.
I have to jump in real quick, because we actually have done that. We had a 2-week workshop just a few weeks ago where we had senior employees in our organization, and we brought in CSRs from our from our contractor, students and parents, and all of us in the middle working together in a 2-day workshop to walk through customer journey and the mindset of the customer, because those are two different things. It's the journey that a customer will take, but it's also the mindset that a customer has, and those mindsets can change as they go along the journey. And it was amazing to have a student who's been through that process. There's a student at a local university here, a CSR, a parent, and also a financial aid officer coming in as well to participate in that.
What were the takeaways from that? I mean, how much did it change the way you thought about the journey of students and parents?
It was amazing to hear these stories about how a CSR is talking to a borrower who's struggling, and you see it in a completely different way than what we're assuming sitting in our office in DC. Mm-hmm. Also, how the student had gone through the process. The points where they were feeling friction with us was different than what we had assumed. And so it was very interesting to see that.
That's often the case. I think, at Lyft, we have something called a Driver Advisory Council, something we launched back in 2016. and we've scaled, and it's simply just to talk to drivers, to be able to get feedback. So we have drivers distributed all across the United States and Canada who we talk to all the time. So if we're going to launch a new initiative, we talk to our driver advisory council to get feedback on it, because they tell us things that we would never think about. Something as simple as bathrooms. We never think that when you're a driver, they would tell us they're downloading these apps to figure out where's the nearest bathroom so that they can, maximize their time and get in and out. And so those are things that we just wouldn't think about unless you were actually behind the wheel for 40 hours a week or so.
I'm trying to find a way to tie the bathroom analogy to government, but I'm like laughing for a good quality joke. And I'll tell you what, man, those drivers talk. Like if you get them talking,
Yeah.
you hear stories. It's like my favorite thing to do.
Yeah.
If I got to go in somewhere in the morning, like this morning, I just shoot the breeze with them, man. They have all kinds of stuff to say.
Yeah, they do.
Good way to get feedback for sure. One of the things that sort of resonated with me was we talked about training. Training's huge. But addressing expectations and accountability as well for your employees. Mm-hmm. And I thought you guys had some interesting ideas that I hadn't heard voiced too much on those subjects. Perhaps you can give us a little bit of dive, and then if you guys have questions, we'll start to go to some Q&A after that.
Yeah, so we, I think when we were talking, we talked about how it really, like this mindset of putting the customer at the center, it really starts with the leaders. And so when we were approaching that and figuring out how do we ensure our leaders are thinking this way, we broke it down into 3 things. And we said that, we really have to focus on expectations. Let's make sure that the expectations of a leader at Lyft are really clear. And so we developed some principles for how leaders at Lyft will lead. And one of those principles is, putting the customer first and aligning all work around delivering value to the customer. And so that was the most important thing. I think a lot of times we want to jump to, we need to bring in some, leadership training and, again, bring people to these leadership summits and train them. And yes, that is important, and I do believe that those things can be valuable. But first and foremost, we had to set very clear expectations. If you are a leader at Lyft, here's your role. And so we did that by developing these principles. And then from there, we developed training around those principles to help reinforce them. And then I think what you're referring to is the accountability piece. So, in a lot of companies, you hear them preach about different things, but what you signal as being valuable is not always the same. And so we really had to take a close look at our work and our operation and ask, what are we signaling to be important? Are we signaling that spending time in meetings and building out fancy decks for your boss is what's important? Or are we signaling that leading and developing your team, getting out there and talking to your customer, that those are the things that are important? And so we took some time to really think about that and have tried to change our approach in making sure that when we're recognizing team members, when we're recognizing leaders, and the things that we're holding them accountable to all align with those principles, and primarily around making sure that we're providing the best experience for the customer.
And before we do questions, I want to give you a chance, Wendy, to talk about some of the training that you guys do. I know that in government, oftentimes you can only do as much as your budget allows for in the coming year, right? It's a sort of a challenge that perhaps the Lyfts of the world and corporate America doesn't always have to deal with, or at least not under the same type of challenges. Can you talk about how your team hasn't grown a whole lot, right, recently?
No.
So you're sort of running a lean operation, but then you're adding all these other features.
Yes.
How do you keep them happy without working the snot out of them too much?
Okay, yeah, it's a hard one right now for us. I think we're all feeling the stress at this moment. We're a very lean team, and we've added more things on our plates. I think for us, it's that the wonderful thing is that we're all very mission driven. We are mission driven to make sure we can help students achieve their goals of going to college. And whatever the financial constraint is, we want to be able to help them alleviate that constraint. So that's one piece that we know we're walking in with a group that is very mission driven. For us, it's funny because it's not the funding right now is not the issue with regard to training. It's what you touched on is it's the time. We don't have the time for that training right now as much as we'd like to be able to go and do trainings in that way, because we do have some big projects that we're working on. So the training tends to happen on the job in the moment. Right now, for example, we're trying to shift to agile. in the way that we're doing our development work and the way we're just doing all our work across the board, but we're trying to do agile while we're trying to do the work. And so it's been very interesting to do that. So you're learning in that way. Similarly, as we're doing social media and learning new pieces around new techniques on how to do outreach on social, we're learning along the way. So we're not doing the formal courses per se, but we are learning and bringing in experts to help us as well. So we have partnered with Accenture to come in and help us. So we have that additional support, but also learnings from them as well. So we're doing it as we are working.
Which I often think is, sometimes the most effective, because it's really more sustainable than just bringing people in, teaching them, and then bringing one in.
Well, you're applying what you're learning right away.
Yeah,
You're like, okay,
exactly.
we have to get this into place.
We had some similar, I wouldn't say like resource constraints necessarily, but because we're a new team, we were trying to figure out how can we scale this without having to bring in more resources. And one of the things that we're exploring is this idea of sort of training coaches throughout the organization. So a lot of times we'll do these trainings, and initially we'll bring in an expert to train, and then we sort of do like a train the coach, and the coach trains the coach. And now we're at a point where as we scale, we have these coaches who can be anyone from junior team member all the way up to a senior executive who are really leading through the organization. So it doesn't require additional resources, and so far it's been pretty effective.
Does that change the way that you look at people that you want to bring in your organizations as well?
I think it definitely does, because you want to bring in people that will add value. It's the skill set that they're bringing in, but will they be able to teach others that skill set as well? So you do look to see what value they can add, what experiences have they had that can help us get to where we want to go as well.
Yeah.
Okay, we have some time for questions. I have more, but I'd rather hear from you guys. So got a mic, and the gentleman here is, just wait 1 sec for the mic, because I think this is being live streamed and recorded.
Good morning. Thank you both for coming today. This has been fascinating. I just have a quick question about the customer experience and what metrics you are tracking to ensure that your customer experience is being successful, and how you're tracking those metrics.
You guys can both have a stand.
So we do customer surveys regularly with different sectors, whether it's the individuals who filled out the FAFSA or individuals who are borrowers and going through repayment. So we have surveys. We also have surveys even when we do presentations or webinars for those participants. We ask them to provide us surveys. The other piece, though, is on social. You hear it right away. You hear if you're doing good or you're not, and where the pain points are. So we hear that as well. And we have a feedback mechanism on our website. So we are trying to we're trying to allow our customers to give us that feedback. We also have we have a network of partners that we really rely on, to help us carry our message, but also to hear from our customers. These are college access organizations, the schools, the people that are working day to day with our customers. We ask them to tell us what they're hearing, how can we make things better. We rely on them a lot, especially when we're doing product development work, to help us get the product to the best place it needs to be.
Yeah.
Yeah, very similar. A lot of feedback mechanisms, surveys. So we use a Net Promoter Score to measure like sentiment for both riders and drivers. Also with the rating system within the Lyft app, if you've used it, that's a nice built-in way to kind of see how satisfied, especially our riders are. But really what's been most valuable has been the direct feedback. So Driver Advisory Council, being able to talk to them directly and hear what they have to say. And then internally, we do a lot of employee engagement surveys and things like that to understand the satisfaction of our internal customers.
Good question. Other questions? Yep.
I just had a question for the FAFSA. Well, first of all, thank you for telling us about those new ways of filling out FAFSA. I wish that existed 20 years ago.
We all do.
So my question is actually what you mentioned about your partners.
Mm-hmm.
You don't really own the complete customer experience. You're investing in your technology and your app and your education and your site, but it's actually most students don't interact with you. At least they didn't, many years ago. But it's actually their school financial aid office.
Mm-hmm.
So how are you bridging that customer experience? Because they're actually your voice.
So yes, they are a voice and they're our partners, but we are actually trying to change that a little bit as well in the work that we're doing, so that when we have this new website that we are creating right now, there'll be a portal, there'll be a section that's customized for the borrower, for the student, for the parent, for our customers, so that they will be able to see, here are my loans, here are the grants that I have, here's how I can continue to interact with federal student aid. Because I think you've brought up a really good point, because traditionally students interact with us when they fill out the FAFSA, then it's the schools, and then it's back to us when they're repaying their loans. We're trying to fill that gap in the middle, that they keep their connection with us. So we are trying to change the way we're doing things. The schools will always, and in this case, the schools are the colleges and universities, they will always be a touch point for those students. And so for that, with them, we continuously give them information, give them tools and resources so they can keep that connection with the students. But we're also trying to play a bigger role during that student's college career and keep connected with them as well.
Question. We got a gentleman in the back there. Oh, I didn't even see you.
Hey, good morning, everyone. Annie, I love your title, first of all. Field Empowerment, that's really cool, and it sounds like you're doing some really cool stuff. Wendy, from personal experience, love the app. Thank you.
Oh, thank
I've gone
you.
through that with my children, but it really made the user experience and our experience much simpler and more efficient. I love what you're doing with the engagement and getting stakeholder feedback from students and parents and financial aid. Can you talk about your strategy for next steps? Like, what are you doing with that? Like the feedback that you're getting from all of these stakeholders, what's next for you? How do you use that to build a better customer experience?
Well, we use it constantly. We rely on that feedback to help us create the best product that we can. So it's similar to, you had actually brought this up, is that as we're developing this website, we're looking at things, we're like, oh yes, this is the color, this is the shape the box should be, all of this, we're ready to go, and then you do testing on it and no one likes the way we all thought we should do this. So that's one piece of it. The other piece is we're really bringing in our partners, the college access organizations earlier on too, to say, okay, here are our plans, here's what we're doing, we want you to, you are our partner in this. We want to make sure you know this is happening so that you can support us as we go forward. We learned, I have to say, the hard way, that we didn't make sure that we reached out to our partners first, and they were hit with announcements of things changing at the same time our customers were, and that was hard because they couldn't help us, they couldn't support us. So we've learned that let's make sure our partners know what's happening ahead of time so they're ready to support us in these efforts.
By the way, where's my compliment, man? You get these guys, butter them up? No, I'm just kidding. Doesn't matter. No, I'd ask for it.
It's the tie.
Question in the back.
Hi, I was wanted to follow up on the first question, and I was curious. Beyond surveys, are you looking into data and data analytics that would indicate, for example, demographics,
Yes.
where that app is being
Yes.
used?
Data analytics are huge for us right now. We use Google Analytics on all of our digital platforms, including the mobile app, and so and thank you for bringing that up. I'm sorry, especially when that's run out of my team. I should remember that. So we are using the analytics in a huge way to help us figure out, okay, do we actually need to move something in a different place because everyone's going here, or where are people going? Do we need to make the content a little clearer in this section because it seems like this is where people are dropping off or being confused? So we are using Google Analytics.
Any other? Okay, we got two more questions over here. I want to get both of you before we have to get off.
You. I heard Annie say that most companies operate top-down and that hers does not. And I heard a lot about information being gathered at the bottom. But I'm wondering, are decisions actually made at lower levels, or did you mean that input was used from lower levels in making decisions?
Yeah, great question. A little bit of both. Certainly we have our teams at HQ, and we have very smart people to make those decisions. But You know, a lot of this, when I speak about that top-down mentality, I'm speaking specifically about our field organization. So our teams that are serving, that are in our local offices distributed across, U.S. and Canada, they're actually on the ground. And the one piece that we've flipped really is for those decisions that directly affect the local teams and the communities, we really are trying to empower those teams on the ground to make those decisions. Certainly engineering and product decisions, we'll use the field to inform. They may not be the ones making those decisions, but we really are trying to get to a point where our teams on the ground who are close to the customer are trained and have the training, the knowledge, and the resources to be able to make decisions that directly affect the customer. And that us at HQ, we're there to support them, to give them the right guidance, to help scale those decisions. So it's definitely a little bit of both.
Yeah, one more question. I know we're over time, but I want to get this gal in the middle here.
Thank you, Wendy. My question for you is on your data analytics, what software are you using, and how do you take the analytics, the data that you're receiving, how do you take, because after we are done with college, so now we have to pay the loan back. Mm-hmm. Do you look at any of that data analytics or the information that's coming in from the...
So I think, yes. And so meaning like we look at the data, meaning the surveys that the borrowers may submit. Oh yes, we look to see where their pain points are. How can we help improve their knowledge around different? So let me take one step back. When you have to repay your loans, it's a very complicated process.
Preach.
To be honest, and some of it is complications that we have created because we have multiple repayment plans. What is the best plan for you? So we are proactive. We gather information through these surveys and through, if we're doing a webinar and it's focused on borrowers, we get feedback from them at that point. Then we need to figure out what is the best way to help these borrowers and help them figure out what the best repayment plan is for them. And so we have tools such as a loan simulator tool, a repayment tool. We send out emails to specific segments of borrowers thinking because they may benefit from certain information, knowing who they are. We know what plan they're in. We know how long they've been paying their loans back. Perhaps we need to nudge them and say, maybe there's some other options that are available for you that are better. So we are taking data that we get and then using that to communicate to our customers in a more focused and customized fashion.
All right. Hey, we're over time, but Annie, Wendy, thank you so much for doing this.
Thank
And I hope
you.
you guys
Thank
stick
you so
around
much.
for a little while longer and learn some stuff.